Welcome to the Lubbock or Leave It podcast, a recruiting podcast on Red Raider Sports. I'm Matt Clare. This has been Golan, and we're brought to you by our title sponsor, Carnley Properties. Clayton Carnley and his team in the greater Austin area can help you with any of your real estate needs. Clayton is a Red Raider, longtime poster at Red Raider Sports. And, first of all, we thank him for the sponsorship. But guys, you're making a big decision like that, buying land, a home, making transactions. You need somebody in your corner that knows what they're doing. Clayton and his team will get you covered. Ben and I will post his contact information underneath this video and all of our recruiting content at Red Raider Sports. With that being said, Ben, how's it going this week?
I'm doing well, 3-0, new commit last week, some new JUCO offers we like to see. So, all I asked for, I said I couldn't watch the game live last week. I couldn't, but I saw it was a blowout on my phone, so I could, enjoy my brother's wedding. It was, it was nice. Didn't have to stress about a last possession throw to the end zone like the week before. So,
Sure.
all good news.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're lucky you didn't see the first quarter, but then everything after that was pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think really, Texas Tech aside, you look across college football, and after 3 weeks, I don't know how many definites there are out there, who's really confident about what they see from any particular team. So anyway, we'll see. But we're gonna get to what's gonna happen in Austin later in the pod. First, we're going to discuss some recruiting. And I think, we've talked about that being 3-0. I've written about it a little bit recently, but college football is in week 3, high school football is in week 4, week 5, junior college is in week 3, week 4. And so you see at every level of football that you're seeing, more so than last year, right? Where we didn't have a normal football season, especially JUCO. A lot of them were pushed to the spring. There's just some normal things we're used to in high school and JUCO recruiting. And, one of those is just a tried and true thing that's been around forever, is that coaches are building relationships, building a rapport with a young man, recruiting them, but they're digging into, talking to coaches, talking to parents, reading transcripts. And then what they want to do is they want to see those first 3 games on film. And so you touched on it, Ben Roberts. Unfortunately, last week we couldn't record a pod. You and I had posted a recruiting roundtable that included, our thoughts on Ben, and we'll certainly talk about him a little bit here as well. But I think that's a perfect example of that. He specifically said that, he met the coaches over the summer, came to the camp, came to unofficial visits, and that's what the coaches told him is we want to watch, your first 3 games. And, once they did that, and once they said they wanted to talk, he said he knew, he felt just strongly the offer was coming, that so much so that he sat down with his parents and said, hey, if they offer me, I'm going to commit. And so they were like, wait, what? And so, I think that there's all of that to say is that's why I want to focus on these JUCO guys, because clearly they're seeing something on tape. And a few of these guys have like 30 offers. So they're seeing something that a lot of people are seeing, but especially on the JUCO side, yeah, kids are going to, gravitate to Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, et cetera. But I would say more so on the JUCO side, those guys kind of blaze their own trail. They look at depth charts. There's things that are important to them that aren't important to the high school prospect. But with that being said, Ben, why don't we focus a few minutes on Ben Roberts, the outside linebacker / safety, 6'3" out of Eaton High School here in the DFW area. What's to like about Ben? I sort of mentioned how all of that went down from a high level timeline, but what are your thoughts on adding Ben Roberts to this class?
Yeah, I think the size, the speed, that's all there. You got a 6'3" linebacker, and you just need to put some weight on him. And then, that's all you can ask for from just a physical, and he runs like a 4.6, something like that. So you need to maintain that as well. But, I do the weekly commit recaps. And so, I posted mine this week, and Ben Roberts is out there returning punts. Like this is a linebacker commit. You don't see that too often, even though he plays safety for his high school team, and he also made 8 tackles in the game. So just, he has that potential. And I think it's another good add from the DFW area, which is obviously a key spot for Tech to recruit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and traditionally we think linebacker, we think of these big stocky guys that are come and fill a gap and stop the run. And that's certainly, all linebackers need to be able to do that. But I think in today's game, to have somebody with that athleticism, 6'3", 210 pounds. Now, when I wrote about it last week, I was just curious. So I went in looking for a comp, and Jacob Morgensterner was the exact same height and weight out of high school. He's now at 230, 233, something like that. He had actually had a pretty good game on Saturday. And the reason I mention him, or just the frame and the potential for Roberts, is he's going to add more pounds. And let's say 220, 225 is a playing weight, that's not crazy to think. And that just gives you so many advantages as a defensive coordinator, because yeah, you want to stop the run as a linebacker, but you talk about this jack position or the spur position or whatever any defensive coordinator calls it in college football. If the other team has got a Mason Tharp, or the other team has got somebody in the slot that's causing problems, well, you've got an athletic, huge framed linebacker that can run around with them in space. And so I think that that's a positive. And yeah, I just see a lot of upside. And for me, without telling a whole long story, because I posted it plenty, I think these are the stories that resonate more in recruitment than, hey, we just offered this 4-star kid and we got him, right? I mean, that happens once, twice a year, maybe for Tech. But with transfers, with COVID, with all these changes, right? I just think it's refreshing to see a kid come and earn an offer and put his kind of faith in the process that the coaches were throwing out there. And so I think he earned it. I think he jumped on it. And I think he's very sound in his decision. And so I just know at a very high level at Eaton, the coaches have been doing a good job of kind of bringing that program back to life, getting these kids out there from a recruitment standpoint. And I can't wait to go see him in person and kind of validate some of this size and athleticism, watch a game, because I looked it up. It's not too far away from the house.
Yeah, and one thing that, I don't know this for a fact, but I think it's worth mentioning is, the last, several months we've talked about Travell Johnson, who's a linebacker committed to Texas. You kind of think, okay, they offered Roberts, he committed, maybe that's out of the picture. I don't know that for certain, but it certainly just appears to be like that. And you mentioned going to see him in person. I'm excited about that too, but I'm also excited about the kid we're seeing next Friday in person, and that is Bryson Donnell, the running back.
Yeah,
And
big
that
week.
is because with my weekly posts, he's going off. And this week he scored 4 touchdowns. Had over 190 yards against Allen. So I mean, his stock is rising. I know his teammate Jamarian Miller's committed to Texas, the running back, so he's splitting time with a 4-star guy. It's just impressive what he's doing, and so I'm excited to see him next week too.
Yeah, and I think it's easier for us to write the story, and we talked to them after the commitment. Okay, 2 guys with over 1,000 yards rushing, but it's not like you and I sat down and watched tape from every game that Tyler Legacy played last year. But to see that come to fruition and kind of develop into their senior season, I mean, we both saw Martin Miller at Under Armour. I mean, he
Yeah,
looks like he's chiseled out of rock. I mean, he's definitely a top prospect kind of guy. But that draws all the eyeballs from different sites, national guys, and Bryson's the one scoring 4 touchdowns and really going off. And so I've seen the weekly updates. I've stayed in touch, and I'm eager to see him, because I think running the ball is obviously something he's going to be doing, but I see him doing a lot out of the backfield,
yeah,
catching the ball. And so I'll be interested to see the offense and just really talk to him a little bit as well. But yeah, I mean, that sort of caps the Ben Roberts conversation. You're at 8 commitments. Nothing too crazy. Obviously, you're still tracking Major Everhart. My comments on the maybe done with high school, weren't very well received, but I mean, we'll see how that plays out. I think the only reason I mentioned that, Ben, is we're seeing the national guys in college football, the national journalists start to talk about this NCAA ruling that they can, for a one-time thing, they can go from 25 limit to 37 and quote unquote replace 7 transfers. So, Tech was pretty fortunate to not really lose anyone to the transfer market. Obviously, Jalen Polk leaving was not great, but that was the headliner. And then outside of that, guys that hadn't played or were buried on the depth chart, certainly they went and sought new opportunities, but you weren't just plagued by, a bunch of folks leaving by any means either. So we'll see how that all plays out. I would be really interested because as we sit here, I mean, it's the end of September, right? So in 2 months, are you going to really rally and add a bunch more high school guys? I doubt it. But we'll see. I mean, the coaches have numbers, and I think, much of what we'll talk about that's happening on the field, especially on defense. I mean, that's what you went out and got guys for, right? You want depth, you want starters, you want impact players, and yeah, I mean, we'll see how that shakes out. That's probably a whole nother topic of conversation. But since we're on it, and that's what we opened up with, Ben, first 3 or 4 games in the books, we saw over the past 2 weeks, whether it's JUCO, Ben Roberts, which we've already covered, 2023. We even saw a couple 2024 quarterback offers, which is a whole nother conversation. You and I just chose we're not going to go there because those kids are sophomores, so they'll have their time. We'll talk about that when we have less to talk about here. But JUCO guys, that's interesting to me because I've talked to one of these guys. And there's a whole different set of variables, in my opinion, for JUCO, right? I mean, these guys, they want to get out of JUCO. They want to figure out, what their D1 opportunities are. And in my experience, and I don't know about you, even if some of these kids say they have 30 offers, like, can they commit to 30 teams? Probably not, right? And so we'll see where the dust settles there. And especially with like what I mentioned earlier with JUCO being canceled or moved to the spring, a lot of kids, I forget the young man's name, but even the defensive tackle that Tech had originally had committed decided to stay another year and then, quote unquote, decommitted from Tech, right? So we'll see with some of these guys, but really quick, offensive lineman Tyron Weber, defensive back Moses Alexander, defensive back Keontae Scott. I almost said Keontae or Chianti, like the wine, whatever. Anyway, saw he added Auburn. So, again, guys that are doing well on the field. And then Marquise Gilbert, who's adding offers himself. And so we won't get into where these guys play JUCO, all that good stuff here. But Ben, I mean, offensive line, obviously, right? Defensive backs, obviously. I do, offensive line, Tyron Weber has 32 offers. That's kind of who I was referring to there. And you name it, he's got the offer. So that one might be a little bit tough, but he is in Roswell, New Mexico. So maybe getting in on campus and talking to him about how he can help right away, maybe some of that does help. We need to try and get a hold of him. We haven't had a chance to talk yet, but maybe he's from Texas, right? Maybe there's some connections there. We'll find out. I guess, that one makes all the sense in the world for the defensive backs. They offer 3. Let's say you offer 3 and you get 1. Okay, I understand that line of thinking. But going after 3 guys when there's not a commitment in the current class from a high school level, any concerns there? Any question marks as to maybe what they're doing there? Well, I say that. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, from a DB standpoint, like, do you see this as just adding that experience, or should we just expect the JUCO targets every year? I mean, it just seems like we're kind of getting used to different things these offers. Before these offers, I guess is a better way to say this. Before these offers, there were no offers, right? And all of a sudden it's 3 DB offers and kids that can come in and help right away. So I'm trying to help me make sense of that.
Yeah, I think you have the 3 high school commits, but they're all kind of listed as athletes. Right. So, but yeah, I just think this is immediate help because you're losing DeMarcus Fields, you're losing Muddy Waters, you're losing Eric Monroe. You could lose Adrian Fry. He has the option to return. So, I mean, those are 4, key contributors. There's probably another 1 or 2 that I'm, forgetting. So yeah, I mean, you just need, guys to come in and play. And now the junior college season, as you mentioned, has been going on for 3 weeks. And so the coaches have seen the film, they like what they see. And some of them are, more highly recruited than others. But again, this is an area that coaches have been pretty good in since they got here is in the junior college market. And so, I mean, yeah, I like to see the new offers. Like you mentioned earlier, they're going to expand from 25 to I think it's 32. And you can replace 7 transfers, I think is what it was. So it does give you that extra flexibility there. I would like to see, we don't know how many high school additions they'll have. I would like to see some along with junior college and then obviously transfers to fill it out. If you have the 1 year waiver, take advantage of it is what my mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I don't see why a program wouldn't want to add bodies. I guess kind of there's some conflicting approaches there. I don't know. It's all new, so we're sort of spitballing here, if you will. But you want to utilize that if you can, right? As one school, the other school is you don't just add somebody to add somebody, right? I mean, you want to evaluate them, you want to make sure that you really want them, and so I mean, I think we've been there, done that, from a prospect evaluation standpoint. What they were when they committed, what they've contributed to the program. I guess in this day and age, though, I guess I find it hard for that to really matter, right, Ben? Because kids are going to transfer, kids are going to get, they're going to see that, okay, I'm not getting playing time, nothing's changing here, and so barring some kind of bad season and coaching change, I don't really see that being relevant to any sort of short or long term recruiting strategies. But I don't know, it stood out to me just because you're going after corners. And the other thing that I'll mention, I did talk to Moses Alexander out of Kilgore. Out of all those guys, Tech was his 7th offer. So, that's a little more realistic because you're going after a kid from Texas, and, you've got a good shot there. But he had mentioned that Coach Jones said that they do have a couple guys that will be looking to graduate and go, throw their hat in the ring for the NFL next year. And so I know he's talking about Fields and a few of these other guys, and so they'll need to replace that depth. Interesting enough, Moses doesn't graduate until May. I haven't talked to these other two, but I would imagine that, if they had their way, they'd find a guy that could be there in January,
Yep.
in the spring, somebody who's going to graduate early. And, as we all know, those guys are a hot commodity. But, again, just to round that out, Weber with 30 offers, Moses, I mentioned, with 7, Keontae with 20, and then Marquise with nearly 20 as well. So kind of wild to see that at the JUCO level, just for me anyway, doing this a while. But it'll be interesting to talk with them and sort of wade through what's real, who they're really talking with, versus talking to actual 30-20 different coaches. But I guess that wraps up the new offers. What we'll do is, when we have less, we'll dig into some of these 2024 offers. At quarterback, it's interesting because we were waiting for quarterback offers in 2022. That didn't happen. We had the quarterback offer 2023 with Austin Novosad. And then I believe they've had either one more or they've been talking to a young man in 23. But to have, 2-3 2024 offers out there now is certainly, it's eye opening, and it's weird saying 2024, especially as you cover recruiting. But hey, it's here, right? But one guy I wanted to mention, 2022. I think you and I both think the ship has sailed here, but Jalen Peoples out of Cedar Hill, 3-star cornerback, healthy offer list. It all came down to KU and Tech. And, I don't know. I never felt strongly one way or another, but I always just sort of felt, hey, I'll state the obvious. I think we're going to beat KU for a recruit, right? Well, it didn't happen. Wasn't much of a story, right? But he just decommitted. And so, again, of all the high school prospects, it's a guy they brought on campus, it's a guy they had around other commits, other top targets. So is the ship completely sailed? I guess we can't say that in September without knowing a little bit more of the situation. But again, another kid that we're going to try to get in touch with and at least see where things stand, because I don't think that he decommitted from Kansas because Tech was, begging him to come to Tech, or that another school said, hey, we're going to offer you. I think he just said, hey, well, I might have other options here. And so we'll talk to him a little bit. I know Tech, Kansas, and a little bit of Baylor, was involved there. But I don't know. You see that as a possibility, Ben?
I don't. I think he decommitted from Kansas because he saw them get blown out by Coastal Carolina and Baylor in back-to-back weeks, and Kansas is, just as terrible as they were last year. No, I don't know. He visited Tech, right, and he was hard to get a hold of, and then you were actually able to reach him. And what did he tell you? He wasn't talking to Tech like that. This is right after his official visit, and so it's a weird deal. We're obviously not on these visits. We don't know what happened, or if he's telling the truth, or if they're actually recruiting him or not. I don't just from hearing that, I don't see him as a possibility.
What's crazy is I was just spent probably 2 minutes talking about number of offers and stuff like that. And I just pulled up his profile to cross reference. He did officially visit Baylor, but he lists 31 different offers. Right. And
Hmm.
so I guess I only bring that up because if you're a recruiting nerd like we are and you're watching this video, again, it's hard to say this without it coming off disrespectful, but if you look at these offer lists and you really think 20 offers or 30 offers is realistic, then I mean, you guys have to look deeper into that. I mean, there's some coaches that offer and say you got to come to a camp, or they offer and the kid never gets an official offer letter after August 1st. And so I don't know that it's not for me and Ben to decide, but I can definitely tell you, looking at a kid's profile and the number of his offers and maybe reading through stories or who he says that he's talking with, there's always two different stories there. And most kids are open and honest about that. I don't think any of them are trying to deceive us, right? There used to be, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I feel like there's a couple kids that would lie about stuff. There with the fake recruit a couple years ago. But more so, I put this on the coaches, right? I mean, they're out there trying to land kids. They're out there trying to evaluate. And at one time, I believe Peoples was a 4-star prospect. So maybe it was just the Me Too thing where, coaches wanted to throw offers out there, and, who knows what happened after that. But all of that roundabout to say, we'll get in touch with them. We'll see what's what. But it does certainly look like, both with, I think you mentioned Johnson. I don't know if the Roberts commitment, changes their preference on Johnson. I know he's out for the year with that injury, but they may have just been chasing him and he might have finally said, I'm going to stick with Texas. Who knows, right? But I would argue that him and Ben Roberts are two different players. So I don't put them in the same boat per se. And, we'll confirm some of that too. But that's, from a football standpoint, that's the 2022 updates right now. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Ben?
Yeah, real quick, because I saw this kid post an edit today, and anytime I see a recruit post, get an edit from the coaches, I reach out to them. Is Gavin Freeman? He's an athlete from Oklahoma City, from Heritage Hall, same high school, West Welker, and so he, similar sized, 5'10", 170. He posted an edit earlier, rec him. It's not the first one he's posted this month, and so I just reached out, he camped with Tech over the summer. He told me he stayed in contact with the coaches. Obviously, he's still getting edit. I would expect a visit to be at some to come at some point this fall, most likely. Uh, you know, is he a potential? If Major Everhart goes to Notre Dame or elsewhere, is this guy kind of the fallback option? I don't know, but they're clearly still recruiting him, and he has offers from Air Force in Tulsa. He visited Oklahoma last week, and I went over to Sooner Scoop, and they were talking as if Oklahoma might even offer him. And so this is a guy to keep an eye on. Apparently, he's had a big time start to his senior year. So I'll talk with him more, and we'll get the full story there. But I would just say he's a name to keep an eye on, Gavin Freeman.
You had us at Wes Welker, Ben. I mean,
Yeah.
you just stop there. Oklahoma, Wes Welker. I mean, if he's 2 stars, then this is a take for sure.
He's a 2-star,
Yeah.
5.3.
Sold. No, yeah. I was searching that in the background. It looks like Sooner Scoop has a video and a GIF of him and the story, that they may be interested. So yeah, good find. And I'm glad you mentioned him. I mean, I do. I think we're in that part of the season where, I kind of mentioned it earlier that, okay, we're almost into October. How much time is there really? But again, we try our hardest, but we don't know everything. And like you just said, use Gavin or use Ben Roberts an example. You and I didn't know how serious things were with Ben Roberts, because he didn't even have an offer until the day he committed. He's just like any other kid that had camped with Texas Tech. And so, there's probably more Bens, more Gavins, that are out there. And we'll see how that comes to fruition. That to me is what makes this home stretch of recruiting, all that more interesting, because then the real job starts, Ben, if this 50-50 thing is true to form, and you and I are chasing around any kid that puts his name in the portal, that may or may have been recruited by Tech, that the coaches may or may not be following, et cetera. So there's almost, I used to talk about recruiting seasons. With a couple months left to the December signing period, I think the focus is all on remaining high school targets and then early grads at the JUCO level. But man, after that, I think it's just going to be another mad dash like we saw last year with 9 to 10 different additions from the end of December through February. So it'll be exciting times. But anything else that we need to cover on the recruiting side?
I think that's it for recruiting. You want to talk about the game on Saturday a little bit?
I do, because the off season's long. The off season is like walking through the desert looking for the water, right? At some point, and we're here, and you and I, as we sit here, the team is 3-0, Ben, and that's everyone. What did everyone say before the season? Beat U of H, right? That was before it meant more with realignment and all this, right? Then you take care of your other non-cons, and you're 3-0. Yes, we know what happened against SFA, but a win's a win, 3-0. And yes, I think, Texas losing on the road to Arkansas takes a little shine off of this. But as I got to thinking about it the other day, it doesn't change the fact that they're leaving, and that's got to be some bad blood. And that the fact that, these guys want to go down there and ruin their season even more. And all that's easy to say. But I truly do. If I'm making a prediction, I'll do that for the site. We don't have to talk about our prediction, but I think regardless of what you can assume, take away from the season so far, the one thing to me that just keeps standing out, regardless of the opponent, is the defense. I mean, they have depth. And what that means is you don't see this regression from the first half to the second half. That means you've got 3 guys that can rotate in on the defensive line, and not just somebody's, right? You've got guys that have been in the program, guys that have air in their lungs, they're conditioned, they're ready to go, right? And then at linebacker, you just have insane depth. And so what they're doing to teams is they're not letting them run the ball to the best of their abilities. Sure, they may give up a player here or there, but they're forcing teams to beat them through the air. Now, if we're saying that about a Tech defense, 5 years ago, you may hold your breath and ask how many passing yards they gave up. But look, let's face it, Casey Thompson is not a proven commodity at quarterback any more than Tyler Shuck or any quarterback really, not named Spencer Rattler or anybody else in this league. And so I think that they could force him into mistakes. And I think the defense can win this game. I truly do. It's weird to say, but I think 11 a.m. on the road is probably the best thing that could have happened to this team. I think they're going to go in there and play a sound game. And I think there's going to be a roller coaster. Don't get me wrong. There may be some heartache, but or some tension watching the back and forth. But I don't know. To me, we can talk about a lot of different variables. For me, it's the defense. And that's, again, Arkansas was able to play defense and run the football against Texas. And I don't think Texas has changed anything about their defense in the past week playing Rice, where they're not going to give up some rushing yards. And that's the only thing I'll touch on the offense. Obviously, you can fill in the blanks there. But for me, the defense has a chance to truly shine this weekend.
Yeah, I was going to say this is probably the least scary Texas team that I remember since I stepped foot on campus, 9 years ago or whatever it was. Like they have Bijan Robinson. Do they even have any other all conference guys like or they usually have 3 or 4 of these all Americans, what have you, all conference. They just don't have that. And they came into the year with Hudson Card as the quarterback. They gave him 2 games and benched him. Like, is that a plan? I mean, I don't know if like good teams do that. And Casey Thompson comes in here with 60 career passes thrown. Is he supposed to be scary? I mean, I'm with you, man. I think the Tech defense can, if they can shut down the run, which they've done great so far. They've given up 51 rushing yards a game and 1.7 yards a carry on the year. If Tech can slow down Bijan Robinson, I just don't think that Casey Thompson, and this is famous last words, right? It's going to come back and he's going to throw for 500 yards. But I just don't think that Casey Thompson and these receivers, I mean, maybe they were highly rated. They're not household names. I mean,
No.
and
Well,
and so
I read one prediction well, two things that were laughable to me is that Tech would need to spy Casey Thompson because he's this prolific runner, and that would cripple the defense. Wrong. I mean, come on. Yeah, okay, spy him if you need to, but there's a reason why they run an uneven front. They've got a plan. They're going to force him left, force him right. There's going to be somebody there. Like, there's a plan on defense. I think it's ridiculous to suggest otherwise. The other one is, oh, well, we're going to put Josh Thompson on Eric Kizakama and that'll be okay. I'm like, no disrespect to Josh Thompson, but I mean, come on. Like, that's like us saying, oh, we'll just put DeMarcus Fields on him and he's shut down. Like, got nothing but love for DeMarcus Fields, but I mean, it's just like putting something out there that's, oh, don't worry about it, he's on him. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I hope that that they have that idea and they're just going to go one-on-one with no safety help and just, let Eric Izukama go for 300 yards in this game, because that's what would happen. No, like I said, I'm looking at Texas's depth chart. It's not there are no household names. Like, again, no disrespect to any of those guys, but it's not the same Texas. The game is in Austin with our predictions, which we don't have to talk about, but I'm probably going to pick Texas to win because, I don't know, reverse jinxes and all that crap. But Tech could very easily win this game. It would not surprise me. And I think Tech has the better roster. I really do. Just as far as all the experience that Tech has on defense. I think Tyler Shuck and the offensive weapons are better than what Texas has. Now it's just coming up with the game plan, the schemes, not making mistakes on special teams, not turning the ball over. You got to go do those things on the road, and it's all right in front, in front of them for the team. And if Tech wins this game to go to 4-0, then you're going to West Virginia playing with some house money there. Because I'm looking at these next two games. You got to find a way to win one. I think if you go 1-1, I think most people would be happy. You got Texas in Austin, West Virginia, and Morgantown. That's a tough 2-game slate, potentially.
Yeah, and just playing devil's advocate, if we're going to talk about Casey Thompson, Tyler Shuck's not a proven commodity either. Obviously highly rated. He's played more games. I get all that, but shortened COVID season last year. Then he transfers. The knock on him is, in the big game, there can be inconsistencies or turnovers, right? So I think the biggest key for me, outside of taking advantage of a poor rush defense from Texas, is I know you didn't watch the game, but hopefully you've gone back and watched some film. Yeah. The play action pass against FIU was beauty. It worked to perfection. And I know that that's not going to happen every single week, but when you can establish that run and you can get them on their heels a little bit, that is where you can get those other receivers so involved in this offense. And then once that happens, they cannot dedicate 2 guys to Izukama on every play, or Geiger and Tharp, and all these other guys are just going to eat them up on the inside. Last I heard, I don't know the injury reports or whatnot, but the only other thing I would say is personnel wise, I think they were really needing help because Schooler's brother, who was originally a receiver, was playing like safety for them.
Yeah, so, he's listed as a starter at free safety.
Yeah, and again, I wish him all the luck, but I guarantee that's not who they really want playing safety in that defense, right? And so you've got to, it's got to be an all hands on deck, even from the coaches. Pull out all your tricks, like win this game. And I think we talked about the game versus Houston meaning so much. Obviously, it's game 1. You don't want to start the season with the loss, their move to the Big 12, et cetera, et cetera. But now that's in the rearview mirror, and I would argue that this game, with Texas leaving and them sort of being exposed as a fraud against Arkansas, right? That's what I talked about earlier with college football. It's like, without saying all the examples, you can go around and round and round. And it's like, look, Arkansas is going to play A&M this week. If they beat A&M, what does that even really mean? Do we believe A&M is the number 7 team in the nation? I don't, and so, you can go round and round with the examples. But there were so many people talking about how Texas would be better for all these different reasons, and they got their ass whooped. And I think there's a blueprint there. I think running the football and just keeping them on the field and making it a long, miserable game, I think that'll force them into mistakes. Obviously, I think it was probably a crazy night crowd in Arkansas as well. But that's what I love about the 11 a.m. kickoff. You can pack that stadium all you want, but 11 a.m. games are what they are, right? It's not going to give them much of an advantage.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Every Tech needs to be able to run the ball and hit those play action passes. I did have a chance to rewatch. I thought the tight ends were great,
Yeah.
Kuntz and Tharp. So, you want to see that because it's been a few years since you've used them effectively. And I think they could do damage against, the Texas linebackers over the middle.
I think the thing that cannot happen that's becoming too much of a trend are these slow starts. I mean, every single week the first quarter has just been putrid. And even the first half, hasn't been all that great minus FIU, right? And you don't want to hang your hat on those games. Second half, obviously, you know, besides SFA, you've seen positive uptick or you've seen them try to turn things around. That can't happen on the road. I don't care if it's 11 a.m. or not. You can't give this Texas team confidence and momentum. And truth be told, this is a team you should have beaten last year. Not to go and relive that, but they had it in their hands and they let it slip away. So hopefully more than anything you and I've talked about, they're reminding themselves of that game and that they owe them one. And so I don't know. I know you said you were going to pick Texas. Use the BS reverse jinx excuse. We all know it's not real. I am picking Tech. I am. To me, like I'm okay. Obviously I'm okay if they lose, but I don't see them losing a game that's not really close. So if the ball doesn't bounce their way, so be it. But I have them winning in a close one.
Does it mean anything? I'm looking at the Sonny Cumby. When he got to TCU, he was there 7 years. They went 6-1 against Texas. And their offense scored 48, 50, 31, 24, 16, 37, 33. It's pretty good offense. I don't know if it means anything. I mean, they have new coaches, obviously. It's just something interesting.
I mean, if we believe in momentum and we believe that the first 3 weeks should have prepared them for this, then hey, I mean, to me, if we would have had the pod last week, much like we had our game predictions, I know that I put this in there. If you can get more production from somebody not named Izukanma, that's how this offense is going to open up. And I think that's a maturation from Shuck being new to the program, having a new OC, some of these things. Now, don't get me wrong. They've run some plays that look good, thought wise, that have been failures, right? Some of these double reverses or jet sweep type of designs that have just lost 5 yards at a time. But those tight end screens, the play action, I mean, that's exactly how you have to attack Texas, in my opinion, because I don't think they can stop the run. I think you can stretch them. I think you can play action them to death. And then if they're not respecting Izukanma, throw it over their head. I mean, I think Shuck has proven that he can throw a beautiful deep ball. So keep them honest, run, throw it over their head, and there you go. But I think going back to my original statement, if momentum means anything, then keep scoring points, keep moving the football on offense. I mean, that'll make your defense look all that much better. I mean, so far, so good from the defense. I mean, that's what's going to win this game.
I'm with you. Keep scoring points unless you're up 8 and you break one with 3 minutes left, then fall down at their 1 yard line. Do that.
Let's end the podcast on that one. Jeez, guy's going to pick Tech to lose, and then he's going to remind you guys all of that here at the end. But no, thanks, Ben, for Ben going. I'm Matt Clare. This has been the Lubbock or Leave It podcast, brought to you guys by Cardinal Properties. Give them a holler. We'll include Clayton's info and his team's info here below the video. Ben, good luck this weekend. We'll see you, man.